Good morning. Thank you for joining us. We're proud to present our next speaker, Ken Hoy with Rubrik. Please give him a warm welcome.
Okay, thanks everyone. Really glad to be here today to talk briefly about Amazon S3 and how Rubrik, as a cloud data management platform, actually enables you to use S3 in ways that maybe you hadn't even thought about before. So my name is Kenneth Hoy. I'm a technical marketing engineer with Rubrik and been involved in the data protection industry for a number of years, and most recently I've been involved with AWS as an architect. So before we jump into a little bit about Rubrik and what we're doing on S3, just want you guys to think about how you may be using S3 today. Typically, most of the customers we deal with are usually using just S3 as an archiving tier where they kind of dump their storage, typically as a replacement for tape. And one of the things we want to do as a data management platform is to help customers think about, once you have your data in S3, what other ways can you leverage it so that you can be much more efficient and much more impactful to the business with the technology that you use around AWS. So I thought it'd be good to spend just a couple of minutes giving you an overview of what Rubrik is and how we're involved in this space. So if you think about data management, especially in the data protection area, in the past 25 years, the architecture hasn't changed much. It's been effective, and therefore it's been used kind of similarly over the years. And it typically involves having a large database server that tracks your backups and the files that you're backing up. And then there are a bunch of media servers that are used to actually move the data in the old days from your physical servers over to a tape library. And then over the years, as we started doing more virtual machines, we started making use of snapshots and moving those snapshots off to tape using a bunch of media servers. And over time, you need to grow, you would just add more servers. And then about 10, 15 years ago, one new innovation that came in was the idea of being able to back up the disk as a way to shorten the backup window, because you could back up much faster to disk than you could to tape. And then once you were doing that, it also became fairly simple to say, let's dedupe that data so that you're saving less data to disk and then before sending it off to tape. And then that made it more efficient for you to be able to send those tapes off-site for disaster recovery or compliance purposes. So this is all great, but it's also a very complex environment, lots of moving parts. Everything that's been added over the years has been bolted onto this very complex and sprawling solution. So when Rubrik came into the picture, we decided, let's think about how we can innovate in this area. And one key way we thought about was, what if we took all these complex pieces and basically brought it down to a converged platform, a single solution that could do everything from snapshotting, backups, to dedupe, to archiving. And then we decided to make it a scale-out architecture so that as you're adding more Rubrik instances, you're actually scaling out in the amount of storage capacity you have, as well as the amount of performance that you can gain. And we also decided let's start leveraging the public cloud, particularly Amazon and S3, so that customers can move off of tape, which is not only expensive, but also very unreliable, and move it to a platform that is both in S3 and in Glacier, that is both much more cost efficient if you're leveraging it correctly, and also orders of magnitude more durable than tape that are being used today. So in the case of Rubrik, there are three primary use cases for how we integrate with Amazon in S3. One is around the area of what we call Cloud On, which is the idea, again, of using S3 as a very cheap and deep storage platform that we can send backup data to, so that you're not sending it off to tape. But then once you have that data sitting in S3, instead of just leveraging it only for restores, what if you could use it for things like test dev, for cloud migrations, as well as for disaster recovery? And that's when we came up with a feature called Cloud On, which is a way to take backups of, let's say, your VMware environment and being able to send that off to S3, but then use AWS services to create EC2 instances that are a replica of your on-premises environment. And then the third thing we did was, which we won't talk about so much in this talk, is we also, once you have these workloads running in AWS, we want to give you the ability to back it up efficiently. And therefore, we have something called a cloud cluster, which are virtual Rubrik instances sitting on AWS that can back up your workloads that are running in the cloud. So let's talk a bit first about Cloud Out, the ability to retain data in the cloud, particularly S3 and Glacier. So again, the idea behind this, if you're backing up your environment, this could be VMware environment, could be Hyper-V, could be bare metal Linux or Windows, could be databases such as SQL Server or Oracle. We want to give you the ability to say, once I've backed up that data, maybe I can keep some amount of that data on premises on a Rubrik appliance, but then let's say you have a 7-year retention, rather than keeping that all on premises or having to ship it off to tape, we give you the ability to ship that off to a S3 bucket or series of S3 buckets that are as archives. And we do that in a very intelligent manner, so we don't really want you to treat just S3 as a dumb repository. We want you to be able to leverage that in an intelligent way. So a few ways we do that is we actually index every piece of data file that is sent to S3, so you can quickly do a search. If you have 1,000 instances of a single file, you can just type the name of that file into our dashboard and very quickly find that file to be able to restore it. We're also very intelligent in the way that we store data in S3. So rather than backing up and sending the full amount of data every single day, we actually send only incremental changes. So if you're backing up a series of virtual machines and archiving it all to S3, and you only have a 10% change from day to day, we'll only send those 10% changes. And then we have that same intelligence when we restore. So in a typical scenario today, if you need to restore even a single file in a virtual machine, typically you have to restore the entire machine, which could take hours to do and fairly expensive in terms of a data transfer out cost just to recover that one file. In our case, you can search for that file in our dashboard, and then you can actually retrieve just that file. And we'll find that file and the blocks underneath it that represent that file, and only send those to your on-premises environment. So you'll be able to it's not only is it faster to recover, but it's also more cost efficient. And finally, we also have a way to make sure we intelligently send the metadata for each file along with the backup file, so that in a disaster where you lose your on-premises Rubrik infrastructure, you can actually spin up another Rubrik cluster very quickly and be able to reattach to your S3 archive and be able to recover data quickly. So that's kind of some of the ways we've kind of built intelligence into the way we archive to S3. But in addition, we also obviously are very focused on security, because everyone is concerned about security in the cloud. And so end-to-end, we have security both in transit and also at rest. So for example, we use TLS in order to encrypt sessions as you send them off to your data to S3. And then while the data is in Rubrik, we actually encrypt that data using client-side encryption, where you either provide the keys, or you can use KMS to manage those keys, and then we send that data up to S3 as already encrypted files. I feel like I'm in a train station here. And then we also support Glacier as an alternative to S3 and S3 infrequently accessed. So for data that you may need to maybe do test dev development on, you may want to store that in S3. But maybe you have data that you're probably never going to touch unless it's an emergency, but you need to keep around for compliance reasons. You have the option of sending that off to Glacier, and then we'll be able to recover that as needed. And in addition, if there are some compliance reasons where you need to be able to prove that the file is locked and immutable, we actually support Glacier Vault Lock natively within our dashboard and API, so that you can basically, on a file-to-file basis, apply Vault Lock to that file, to that object. So I want to move on to talk about Cloud On, and then to kind of do a very quick demo of how that works in Rubrik. So Cloud On is the idea that we can take, once you have your backups of your on-premise environment, and you now have that uploaded to S3, let's leverage that data to be able to create a replica, essentially, of your on-premises environment, which you can then leverage for test dev environments, for cloud migrations or for disaster recovery. So instead of having to maintain a secondary physical environment or even a secondary data center that you have to pay for and manage, you essentially can use AWS for that. And we basically enable you to do that in a very cost-effective and efficient way. So one scenario, for example, that customers we have used with Rubrik is they'll take the backup data, send it off to S3, and then in a disaster recovery scenario, they basically, on demand, can take just say your VMware images, convert them to armies, and then launch EC2 instances of them. So now you will have a full copy of your on-premises environment running actually in AWS with all the data intact. So I'm going to want to show you how we do that. So let's see. Okay. So if you look here, this is the Rubrik dashboard. And one thing to keep in mind is that our dashboard is actually HTML5, so it's very fast. And it's leveraging underneath the covers. There are no secret hooks. We're actually leveraging fully open REST APIs. So everything I'm going to show you here in the dashboard, you can do either dashboard, or you also do using the CLI or using some API calls in your config management tool. So in this dashboard, I'm going to go over to show you some of the virtual machines that are backed up. And you can see here that vSphere, Hyper-V, and also Nutanix Acropolis is supported. So if I go here under VMware virtual machines, I'm actually going to search for a machine that I've backed up and archived off to the cloud. So this is a Linux machine. And what you'll see here is that I've been doing backups of this environment for about the past 15 days or so. And you see here that wherever you see a green dot or blue dot, that is a day where I've created a successful snapshot and backup. So I'm going to choose November 15th. And you'll see here that I've got a backup that was done on 12/19 that I've sent up to the cloud. Then if I go to the elliptic circle, I have several options for recovery of this virtual machine. And one of them is to be able to launch it on cloud, onto AWS. So I choose that. I can just tell it where the bucket for that VMware image is stored. And you'll notice here that a M4 large has been chosen. So one of the things we do as we do this is we actually examine the configuration files for that particular machine you've chosen, and we'll recommend a EC2 instance size that most closely maps to that virtual machine you were running on premises. And then from there, I can choose a VPC and subnet that you've defined ahead of time in AWS, and choose a security group that's associated with that virtual private cloud. And so once I've done that, I hit submit. We'll essentially convert that image into an army and then launch an instance in that VPC subnet you've chosen. So for the sake of time, I'm actually not going to do it right now. In fact, I'm going to show you a EC2 instance I launched using that VM image previously. So if I go here, oops, on the cloud mounts, you'll see that I have that source VM is that machine that I showed you earlier. And if I go to the management account, so there's an instance ID. I'm going to copy that. If I go to my EC2 management console, I actually need to go to California. And if I do filter by the tag I just showed you, you can see here that I have that virtual instance that used to be a VMware machine running on premises that I backed up, now running as an EC2 instance in AWS. So it's as simple as that. And then from here, I can actually I can power off the machine. And in that case, once the machine is powered off, you have the option of keeping the army that was used to launch that machine and keep it in AWS. So you can launch it again later. So, all right, let me wrap up here. So it's really simple as that. So as a call to action, if you're interested in finding out more about Rubrik and how we're able to help you leverage S3 more intelligently in your data management. So, part of the data management solution, you can come to booth 1704, where we have people who can help talk with you and provide you more details about how things work. You can also find out more about Rubrik at our website and on our blog site as well. So thank you for your time. Much appreciated.